well, Ori, you know what was missing in your opening? Jokes. You gotta loosen up the crowd, man. I know what you mean. All you had to do is ask. I have many jokes. Wanna hear one? Sure, hit me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to AWE, where the only thing more virtual than our reality is the line for the bathroom. Exactly. Makes no sense at all. My job is secured. Nothing to worry about. All right, bye-bye, Holo Ori. Thank you. Can you go now? Bye. Remember back in 2021, we played the game Metaverse or Schmetaverse? Remember that? Let's try that again, but for real this time. See you in a bit.
This is the time for everyone's favorite game show, Metaverse or Schmetaverse. With the contenders, David Matsuki, Roblox, John Rizzitiello, Unity, John Henke, Niantic, Bobby Murphy, Snap, Tim Cook, Apple, Tim Sweeney, Epic Games, Satya Nadella, Microsoft, Jensen Huang, NVIDIA, Sergey Brin, Google, Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, and Neal Stephenson, Snow Crash. He started it all.
Man, I don't know. I do think we need to get back to some kind of shared concept of reality.
Now here's your host. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage the CEO and co-founder of AWE in the flesh, Ori Inbar. Joining him is the best-selling author of some of the most visionary science fiction of the last 3 decades, known for originally conceiving the term Metaverse, the co-founder of Lamina One, Neal Stephenson.
You're here. Good to see you. I try to be a little more dynamic than I was in that exciting clip of me.
Is this for real or am I in some metaverse hallucination? Mr. Metaverse is here, everybody! Woo! Oh, that's crazy. 30 years in the making. Neal, so first I want to ask actually you guys, I mean, you know that Snow Crash has been a major inspiration for me. How many of you here in the audience have been inspired by Snow Crash? You know, I promised Neal that every single person here is a big fan of Snow Crash, so let's make sure we make it true, okay? All right, Neal, so you were the first to imagine it. And it inspired so many people in this room, maybe everybody. What was the thought process that led you to imagining this as a dystopia? Plus, you know, after 30 years, are you more concerned where this could end or more excited about some of the possibilities of the metaverse?
I'd say I was the first to use that word, not the first to imagine it. I mean, as I'm sure you know, with your background in the field, there were people thinking about similar systems before I wrote the book. Habitat being one example, but the thought process that led to the writing of the book was just that I had been working on a project to do a graphic novel and had gotten a lot of exposure to the state of computer graphics hardware and software in the late 1980s, and that was a moment when it was showing incredible promise. We were beginning, or I at least was beginning to see three-dimensional renderings of scenes based on scene descriptions. So you could kind of see where it would lead, but it was incredibly expensive and hard to do anything with it. And so I thought, what would it take to make this into a mass medium that's used every day by billions of people in the way that television is used? And I thought the answer was mass adoption. That's what drives prices down. That's what makes hardware cheap. That's what brings content makers to the table. And so the metaverse as described in Snow Crash was my best kind of guess as to what a mass medium based on 3D computer graphics might look like. And the book is for sure a dystopian novel in a lot of ways. It's also, though, sort of a parody of dystopian novels. There's a lot of tropes in dystopian movies and books that even 30 years ago had already started to become pretty familiar to all of us. And so even at that point, it didn't seem like I could just write one of those with a straight face. You know, I had to sort of have a little bit of fun with it. And when the book came out, there was actually a little bit of consternation, I would say, from people who didn't know what to make of that. It's like, well, it's a serious book with serious ideas in it, and it's dystopian, but I think he's trying to be funny too. You know,
It's very funny.
how could that be? But the metaverse per se in the book it's neither dystopian nor utopian, or at least that's how I meant to portray it. So a lot of what we see in the opening pages of the book and our initial exposure to the metaverse is kind of very mass market, lowest common denominator, sort of crude, obvious, like, you know, the kind of the worst of television in a lot of ways. But later on, as we get farther into the book, we see that people have used it to make beautiful works of art. We see that there are some people like Hiro and Ing who have lavished a lot of time and attention on making homes in the metaverse that are exquisite works of art, both visually and in the sonic environment. And so what I was hoping to get at with that was to suggest that it could go either way. You know, you don't want to present a completely sort of Pollyanna view of things where it's going to be everything's going to be lovely and sophisticated and elegant in the metaverse, but you don't want to go to the other extreme and suggest that it's going to be entirely gross and icky and gloomy.
And 30 years later, you feel like in which direction are we going with this? The more dystopian side, or you're kind of excited about where this could go from the possibilities perspective?
I think it's a little early still. I think we're really just now getting to the point where we can start. Is kind of how, I mean, not to say that a lot hasn't been done, but just in the last couple of years, it feels like a bunch of things have snapped into place that are all the prerequisites that we need to have on hand in order to really start building a metaverse. And so the sophistication of game engines, the fact that those game engines can be downloaded and used for free, the tool chains that feed assets into those game engines. You know, even just a few years ago, you know, you'd be looking at dropping thousands of dollars on licenses for software packages. You know, now you can pick up Blender for free. You can learn to use it for free. The state of the hardware that's needed to render three-dimensional imagery in real time, and just the user base, the people who've learned how to navigate three-dimensional environments by playing video games, you know, must be past the 1 billion mark by this point. and Tim Sweeney kind of spoke to that in that tweet that you mentioned from just a week or two ago.
Yeah.
When he pointed out that I think the number was 600 million monthly active users, and that's probably combining Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, and others.
VR chat. VR chat was the other one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's to me kind of interesting just to think back even 3, 4, 5 years, and see how much has changed just in that time in terms of those essential building blocks of Metaverse all kind of snapping into place and becoming available to us for our use and development. And so I think it's be very early and very premature to start making pronouncements today about whether it's going in any one particular direction. We're just starting.
And from the hardware and software perspective, how has your thinking changed since then, especially given your work in AR and some companies, in terms of the needs that we have for software and hardware, has that changed in your mind since then?
Well, I was at Magic Leap from 2014 to 2020, and had a little content R&D squad in Seattle, the Seattle office, and learned a lot about many things. We worked on a couple of projects there that I'm happy to talk about, and I had a front row seat on watching other projects that were being built within the company. I guess the big reveal for me when we were doing that was game engines and getting to know a little bit about both Unity and Unreal, and also what a fundamental difference there is between developing for VR versus AR. So like a lot of people, I think I went in sort of having them mushed together a little bit in my head, and soon kind of figured out the hard way that you need a different skill set and a whole different way of thinking to develop for augmented reality. One of the projects that we worked on was called Baby Goats, which just populated your environment with baby goats that would run around and act like goats. And if you were developing something like that for VR, you would be able to create the level in whatever game engine you were using, and you could say, okay, we're going to put a coffee table right here, and the distance from the floor to the top of the coffee table is going to be so many centimeters, and we'll have an animation set up that enables the baby goat to jump from one level to another level, and then it can jump onto the chair and so on and so forth, and you can kind of plan all of that out and tweak the level so it'll do exactly what the behavior that you want. So in an AR version of that, basically it's so much harder and more interesting. It's like you walk into the room and the operating system of your headset has got to first sort of process everything and figure out, there is a rectangular thing that seems flat, maybe it's a table. And below it is a much bigger flat thing, let's call that the floor. And then your baby goat has got to be able to plan a route on the fly. You can't use canned behaviors. It's got to be able to find ways to get from point A to point B and achieve its goals. that's just a very simple example, just a microcosm of the kinds of challenges that you've got to be able to address in order to make an AR as opposed to a VR application, and working on that or just being involved in it was invigorating, you know, for me, and I think for the team, even though it was in a lot of ways way more challenging and demanding than conventional game development would have been.
So, you know, speaking of VR and AR, and back to Snow Crash, the book kept kind of going back and forth between the VR world, the metaverse, and the real world, where you had the gargoyles with AR tech, but nobody's talking about the gargoyles anymore. What? You guys remember the gargoyles? No, I mean, they look a little bit like these Augies, right?
Yeah.
More or less. So why is that? Why do people forget about the other gargoyles?
Yeah, that is a curious thing that I've thought about too, which is that in that book, the metaverse does get all the attention, and the metaverse is clearly a VR kind of environment. But there is a description of people who habitually use AR devices, and they're walking around in the real world. There's a character named Lagos, who's an important character, who's one of these people, and he's described as a gargoyle, which is a slang term in the book that people use for people who are sort of carrying a lot of augmented reality gear around with them and kind of living in AR all the time. And you're absolutely correct that that has gotten a lot less attention than the metaverse side of things. And it's interesting.
It's kind of ironic because, you know, one of the funny things in the book is that the gargoyles, they never actually see what's happening in the real world. Although they use AR, which is supposed to make them more aware of the real world, they keep kind of reading stuff and just being disconnected from the real world, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, to some extent, you know, it's always good to keep in mind that there's a distinction. Sometimes as an entertainer, as a writer of novels, I put things in for entertainment value. And so it's you know, it's funny, or at least it's intended to be funny, to sort of poke a little bit of fun at certain classes of characters, and it's a storytelling technique to claim or to assert in the pages of the book that there's a bunch of people like this, that the technology is out there, and that the people who use it are a little bit apart.
They were essentially glass holes, right?
Yeah.
All right, I want to switch to a different topic. I want to show you a little clip from the Spatial Show. The Spatial Show, comedy series about the metaverse. You guys have seen it? Let's show that clip that we have. It's called "Who Owns the Metaverse?" And kind of looking at these two camps behind the metaverse, the Web3 folks, the XR folks. Can we play the clip?
Hi, I'm Web3 and I'm XR, and we are the Metaverse. Wait, what? Who wrote this? I'm the Metaverse. No way, I'm the Metaverse.
Well, that's kind of the essence of it. So Neal, from your perspective, who do you think will dominate the metaverse? Is it going to be the Web3 camp, which is all about decentralization and ownership, or the XR camp, where the most important thing is really making it spatial and immersive?
Well, I think we have to have both. I mean, when you speak of the metaverse, it's clearly a three-dimensional virtual shared environment. So we can't not have that part of it. So that's automatic. And then the Web3 part of the question has to do with how is it going to be organized? You know, is it going to be a more centralized or a more decentralized model? And so the and that's where we get into the conversation that you're referring to in that video, right? So I'm sort of coming down pretty clearly on the decentralized side of that, and so I guess if I'm right, then we don't need to speak of one side or another dominating, but we need to have them both.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to talk about your new company, Lamina One, which kind of draws on DNA from both camps. If you look at the team, it's really from those two camps, kind of bringing it together. So tell us a bit more about the company and what you're trying to achieve with it.
Yes, I think a simple way to put it is that if we're going to have a metaverse that's being used all the time by millions or billions of people, then there have to be experiences in the metaverse that are worth having. That seems like kind of an obvious statement, but for me, there's a kind of glaring and frustrating lack of support for people who the kinds of people who make those experiences. Right now, the skill set that's needed in order to create metaverse experiences is basically what you see in the game industry. People who know how to use game engines and who know how to create the assets that feed into those game engines. And those people, by and large, have got jobs, they've got other things they could be doing, and so we need to create kind of the economic basis for them actually to get rewarded if they succeed in creating metaverse experiences that lots of people are enjoying. And there's different ways that you can do that. Some of them tend more to a centralized model, but we're an open metaverse company at Lamina One, and we believe that there's a big overlap between the capabilities of blockchain and the requirements needed in order to provide those economic rails for content creators to actually get paid for what they do. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're building at Lamina One.
I believe you wanted to show a video?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on getting some of my own content projects going as a way that we can kind of dog food some of our own technology and make some cool stuff. And in the meantime, it's not about me. It's about trying to draw in and form partnerships and creative relationships with other people who are working in this space. So we're working on a bunch of those, but two that I'll mention right here. One is with a company called Mira that's making extraordinarily high quality scans and digital environments of real world places. We've got a video that we can roll now that Mira has provided us.
Let's roll the video.
So that's Mira, and they're here if you want to talk to them. The other one is Introverse, which is working on a game that is going to make use of mascots from popular European football teams, and kind of, I would say the relevance here is that there have been efforts in the past to make games based on blockchain and NFTs and so on that, I guess the simplest way to put it is they just haven't been fun or appealing to a big audience outside of the blockchain community. And so what Universe is working on is, I think, a game that's going to have much broader appeal. So we've also got a video from them that we can go ahead and roll.
Very cool. So Neal, you wrote some incredible sci-fi books. What inspired you to transition from being an author to being an entrepreneur and actually build some of those ideas?
I've actually been involved in different tech companies since about 1999, when I was got involved at the beginning of Blue Origin. So I was there until 2006, and then for 2 or 3 years I was at Intellectual Ventures Labs, which was an invention company, and then did a transmedia startup called Subutai, and then after that, like I said, I was at Magic Leap for almost 6 years, and now Lamb One. So it's nothing new for me to do both. The way that I write is what I call milking the cow. If you've got a cow and you want 100 gallons of milk, you can't get that in one day. You can only extract so much milk from a cow, and then you need to let the cow go be a cow for the rest of the day, and leave it alone, basically. So the part of my brain that makes literature is kind of like that, and so I get up every morning and I milk it. I get 5 to 10 handwritten pages max, and then the rest of the day I need to leave it alone, and because a lot of what happens is background processing. So during the rest of the day, I do other things, and it's best if they are as unrelated as possible from writing fiction. So it has worked really well for me to pursue that strategy for 20 plus years now. And in the case of Lamb One, I was the way we did it was that I basically devoted 2022 to just doing that and not making any effort to write. But at the beginning of 2023, I stepped back to the chairman role, and went back to writing. So I now find it pretty easy to handle both of those
Very interesting.
at the same time.
Neal, I mean, I can keep going like this for another few hours, but we're running out of time. So I just want to ask you a really quick question that we got online, and it has to do with kind of bringing it back to AI. And the question was that, someone wrote that, I'm an avid gamer and artist, but I cannot code for the life of me. Are we getting close to being able to ingest an adventure book into AI, something like Lord of the Rings or Snow Crash, and generate a 3D world based on that story with characters, and then be able to play it in VR or AR? Would you like to see something like that?
Well, those are two different questions. So I'd say yes and no.
Okay. I think that's all the time we have.
I mean, it's an interesting point just because I'm friends with Weta Workshop, the people in New Zealand who created the props and costumes and sets and so on for the Lord of the Rings movies. And if you watch those movies, one of the things that makes them great is the personal attention and care that's lavished on every single detail of every costume and every prop. I don't think we're going to see work of that quality coming out of AI just because it requires that you do original thinking and come up with something different.
We need the artist in the process.
Yeah, so I think we will see the kinds of things you're talking about for sure. And I've already got too many movies and TV shows on my system that I don't have time to watch. So if there's suddenly 1,000 times as many, that doesn't change my life.
Neal, thank you so much for being with us here today. We're all huge fans. We appreciate it.